On today's show, we'll recap a third straight win for the Ottawa Senators, beating the Eastern Conference leading Washington Capitals 5-4 in overtime, in which the birthday boy scores the winner, and Claude Giroux climbs the NHL's all-time leaderboard.
And we have a weekend preview with our friend Seth Toupal from Locked On Wild.
This is Brady Tkachuk, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
You're Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome! You are locked on to the Ottawa Senators, the only daily podcast covering the Sens. On the outskirts of enemy territory, I'm Ross Levitan, alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms to apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL at Game Time for $20 off your first purchase. Today is Friday, January 31st, and Pilsy, the Ottawa Senators didn't even play nearly their best game at 5-on-5, but they found a way to beat the monsters of the East.
Ross, they didn't even have a single goal 5-on-5, yet they scored 5 goals. Mix in some shorthanded goals, some power play goals, and then, a 3-on-3 game winner by the birthday boy, Thomas Chabot.
Where do you want to start? Because there's so many great storylines coming out of last night's game. It's also, we didn't even touch on it once on the postcast, that's 3 straight wins for the Ottawa Senators after such a disappointing last week where they go 0-for-2 with 0 goals for during the actual week. 0-5 against the Rangers, 0-2 against the Boston Bruins. Like, they found their offense. It wasn't a traditional way, but they found it.
Well, Ross, that just goes to show how much this team is improving. If in November, this team would have had a 3-game win streak, that would have been all 3 of our subjects in the On Today's Show graphic. It would have been what we led with. We would have tweeted it out in all caps. So we're getting used to winning, I guess. A 3-game win streak, ho-hum.
Well, remember how many times the Ottawa Senators won twice in a row to start the season, but couldn't find that third straight win? It took until, I believe, their 5th try when they finally beat Anaheim, Carolina, and then Pittsburgh. They ended up extending that win streak to 6 games, but they went 2 wins in a row 4 separate times before that. And now it just feels like, hey, you can actually get on a bit of a roll with this team, which is what good teams do and why they continue to remain in 3rd place in the Atlantic Division.
Yeah, I think, Ross, let's for this game, let's talk about how they didn't let this one fully slip away. Travis Green mentioned it in his little locker room chat with the boys after the game, like, hey, we got a little loose there when we were up 4-2, and we allowed a really good team, literally the top team in the East, to come back, and they almost put us away. So I think it was impressive that, sure, they get the lead, they lose it, but then they find a way to get it done in overtime, which over the course of this season, most particularly in the start of the year, they find ways to lose that game, and now they're finding ways to win it. If you would have told me Thomas Chabot would have scored the game winner in overtime, I don't think I would have believed you.
We've got to do a whole show soon on Thomas Chabot because what a resurgence it's been. And we really, I think, took away some credit from him earlier on this year saying, wow, Nick Jensen's been such an unbelievable fit. And he has, but he didn't have Nick Jensen and hasn't for the last couple of games. He's had a bit of an anchor on his right side, and he's still finding ways to produce the goal and an assist there. Heck, last year he played 51 games and had 7 more points. So he's played the one less game this year than he played all of last year. So he's only missed the one, and he came back and toughed it out with the broken face, I'll call it, where he was wearing the bubble. But he's producing less offense than last year, but he looks so much better night in and night out.
Yeah, he definitely does. And I think, Ross, the big part of that is Jake Sanderson elevating his game, and now Thomas Chabot doesn't feel like he needs to be the number 1 guy, and that's a big weight off his shoulder. And like you mentioned, they found the right partner for him in Jensen, but he's proving that he doesn't need to rely on Nick Jensen or even any defenseman. Let's just say he hasn't been given the most ideal partner right now, and he's still finding ways to be successful. Still, you get a couple of those defensive lapses where you don't love the way Shabby plays in his own zone, but when he's producing points and for the most part making up for it, You don't mind it.
And when he scores the OT winner, you absolutely love it. Happy birthday, Shabby. A little belated love there for him, where he just came through last night. And it was a great play both by Josh Norris and by Shane Pinto along the boards to make, and you can see on the reverse angle, Pinto, because that's a big pinch right there for Shabby, because both guys are tied up. If the Washington Capitals win that battle, it could be a 2-0 the other way, right?
Easily.
So you can see from the second angle they show that Pinto makes eye contact with Shabby the moment he wins the battle, and Chabot jumps. Like, this team is well oiled. They have that chemistry that we've never seen in the past. So I'm just thrilled that this team's finding ways to win. They've had a few dominant wins over the course of time, but many more of their wins have been these tight checking playoff style games where you have to understand momentum throughout the game and live with the fact that the Washington Capitals scored twice in a minute and 30 seconds after you get a penalty shot in the third period that would have put you up 3 goals. You missed that. You let the Caps come. You weather the storm, and you take advantage of your opportunity. That, to me, is the sign of a good team, because you're not going to run every team out of the building every night, especially one that never loses, it feels like. So credit to the Ottawa Senators. They came to play, and they found a way to win.
And to get a win like that at home is huge too, Ross, because that, like, we heard from Williams Martian, he was boots on the ground for the game, and he said that barn was absolutely rocking. And to get this fan base kind of engaged and excited about this team again, and feeling like, hey, in these big games, it's going to be a roller coaster, but we're going to end up riding it out, and they're going to be 2 huge points that have massive implications in the standings. This fan base is starting to, even the casuals are starting to crawl back and get excited about the Ottawa Senators again.
And they needed those 2 points, because last night on the out-of-town scoreboard, the Tampa Bay Lightning get a 3-0 win. The Columbus Blue Jackets get a big win in a shootout or overtime. I believe it was a shootout, maybe overtime, against the Vegas Golden Knights 2-1. And this was a shootout. The Detroit Red Wings beat the Edmonton Oilers. So those are 2 tough barns. The teams who are in the race went in and won. So for Ottawa to stay ahead and maintain their pace, you cannot undersell it. Other teams lost, like the Montreal Canadiens, the Philadelphia Flyers. But the teams that are rising up here, there's not separation yet. But the Ottawa Senators have now been 3rd in the Atlantic for what? Since Saturday? Like, we're going on almost a week here where they have found themselves in a very good position.
Yeah, and like, not a lot of games in between there too, Ross. They've kind of had to sit and wait and see how other games go, and then when they have their opportunity, they're getting their 2 points. But it's still a very tight race. Like, we feel good about having the Sens 3rd in the Atlantic, Ross, but the 2 teams in the wild card are at 57 points, and then Boston at 56, Detroit at 55, the Sens at 58. So there's 3 points putting them from 3rd in the Atlantic to 4th in the wild card race. So this is you can't say, okay, the Sens got this just yet, although their playoff chances are at 75% today. So you love to see that, but still every single point matters, Ross. I had a huge sigh of relief when they just made it to overtime, because the Caps were pressing at the end of that game. And if you let this one slip away without getting a single point, that would have been, I was about to say devastating. Maybe that's a little bit much, but that would have been very disappointing.
Well, I've said that before. I said it for the Washington game 2 weeks ago here. I said it for the Detroit game as well, where it's like, I'm more nervous in the final 3 minutes of regulation when it's tied than I am in overtime, because you need to bank points.
Well, and this team's so good in overtime, Ross. Like, obviously,
what's their overtime record?
Yeah, let's get LOSP stats department on that. But obviously, the Caps got the best of them last time they went to overtime. But when it comes to overtime, and especially shootout, especially if Levi Merilainen's playing, I have so much confidence in this team. I think, Ross, every time this year when the game has ended in regulation is over and they're going to overtime, I immediately run to FanDuel and put some money on the Sens, because I'm confident they have at least a fighting chance.
7-4 in overtime, the Ottawa Senators, in 11 games this season.
And then what? 1-0 in shootout?
1-1. Remember, they lost the one in Anaheim.
Okay. Yeah. So they've got a good chance when it goes past regulation.
Remember when the Senators were 1-5-1 during that 7-game stretch to end the road trip? And funny enough, their only win was against Minnesota in that stretch, and Minnesota's coming to town. We'll preview that with Seth at the end of today's show. But at that point, Ottawa had fallen out of a playoff spot, and things were looking tense. Since January 10th, so starting with that 5-0 win over the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Ottawa Senators are the number 1 team in the National Hockey League in points. 17 points over that span. The Winnipeg Jets are second with 16 points, and the Washington Capitals are tied with the Edmonton Oilers for third with 15. So the Ottawa Senators, they've flipped the script again here now and have found ways to win on this is now 11 games over that span. They're finding ways consistently. Yes, 8-2-1 in their last 11 games with a +6 goal differential. And to make it matters worse, or make it better, rather.
There we go.
They're doing this with their power play struggling. Sure, they get 2 goals last night, but even with that, they're 6 for their last 33 on the power play. But you want to hear a fun stat? In those last 11 games, their opponent is also 6 for 33. Exact same number.
Okay.
Exact same.
And the Sens are finding ways to score shorthanded and create offense shorthanded as well. I feel like most opportunities, Ross, shorthanded for the Sens are good scoring chances. You had 2 penalty shots shorthanded last night. It was just crazy. So yeah, I love the way this team is shaping up. And let's keep in mind, I know it hasn't been the big story, although we thought it was going to be. This is all without Linus Ullmark as well. Seeing him in the dressing room and seeing him start to work with Justin Peters, the goaltending coach, in practice and getting closer and closer to getting back. It's a miracle that the Ottawa Senators not only are treading water, not only are surviving, but they're finding ways to thrive without their number 1 goalie.
You mentioned shorthanded goals, 2 last night and 1 against Utah. 3 shorthanded goals in the last 2 games. They also got 1 in Pittsburgh to start this stretch. So yeah, they've got 4 shorthanded goals and 6 power play goals in their last 11 games. Really impressive stuff. Sens win 5-4. For a deeper breakdown on the game, check out last night's postcast where we had Jack and Martian, who were both at the game, come on at different times to give us their insight into this one. On the other side, insight on Claude Giroux, not only in terms of NHL ranks, his 1100th point last night moves him up to 67th on the all-time National Hockey League list, but how is he doing in terms of Senators history? That conversation's next. Then Seth will jump on for a preview of tomorrow night's game against the Minnesota Wild. And that ends a stretch of weekend back-to-backs over and over again. Sunday, February 2nd, a day of rest for everybody. But not now, not here. Locked On Senators continues after this.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Attending NFL playoff games is an unforgettable experience that brings fans together. There's only one NFL playoff game left, and it's the Super Bowl. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. And not just sports, guys. You can get tickets for comedy, music, and theater as well. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you're not wasting time searching through thousands of tickets you don't even want. Check out the Game Time Picks to find tickets for the Super Bowl. And I love the super deal. It's super impressive, offering the best value for the event. I love the view from your seat before. If you haven't been to the venue, you can check out what it's going to be like. And I hate getting surprise fees at checkouts. So I always turn on the all-in pricing feature so that I know what the price is going to cost up front. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed.
Today's episode is also brought to you by our great friends over at the Glebe Central Pub. You can visit the GCP where the vibes are free at 779 Bank Street. It's a local neighborhood pub serving great food, awesome drinks, and an atmosphere to match. It's walking distance from Lansdowne. So if you're heading there for the day, doing a little shopping, stop by the GCP for all you need. They have live music every Saturday night. I love live music at the GCP, including tomorrow where Carlos Bandito is doing his thing from 9 to midnight. They've also got the Sens shuttle tomorrow, $17 round trip. And you heard me say live music 9 to midnight. Well, guess what? After the game, the bus brings you back to the pub. You'll be there around 9:45, 10:15, and you can enjoy that live music and great atmosphere that the GCP has to offer. We're on the horn with the GCP now. We're planning something special for March 1st, so make sure to stick with us for that. But head to the GCP anytime, and on game days, let them know that Locked On Senators sent you and get 10% off your bill. And that coincides perfectly with the Sens shuttle. So you're not only getting a great deal, leaving an hour and 15 minutes before the game to head to the pub, may as well be the pub with how much fun we're having at the CTC, but the bus will take you right there an hour and 15 minutes before the game. So go have a cold one, have a bite to eat, and get 10% off by saying you listen to the Locked On Senators podcast. The pub is at 779 Bank Street. We will see you at the Glebe Central Pub. All right, Pilsy. So the Ottawa Senators buzzing right now. We talked about their record and how they're third in the Atlantic Division right now. We will get into tomorrow's game, but Pilsy, it's a stat we've been tracking since it started, really. When Shane Pinto, Josh Norris, and Tim Stützle are all in the lineup. And now they've played exactly one full season worth of games. 82 games, Pilsy. And when they're all in the lineup, the Ottawa Senators are 48, 28, and 6, which over a full season would have been 5th in the Eastern Conference last year.
Oh, man. Ross, verbal meme. If Norris, Stützle, and Pinto had been healthy their entire time in Ottawa, and it's that picture of like a euphoric, utopian, futuristic city where like it's lush and green and beautiful buildings and it's like the perfect environment ever. That would be the case if the Ottawa Senators had all these guys healthy. But we've been treated this year as this year easily the year we've had the most games with all three of them.
Well, if I want to be a hero, I would say it'd be the 12-game sample size when Shane Pinto signed out of college because they all played all 12 games. They were 9-2-1 during those 12 games.
Yeah, they were pretty good in that opening. But yeah, definitely this is the depth that the Ottawa Senators designed their roster to be like. You got Timmy, number 1 seed, Josh Norris, number 2, and Shane Pinto, number 3. And if those guys stay healthy, you're looking very strong down the middle.
Yeah, Josh Norris missed 2 games so far this season, while Shane Pinto missed 8. That's where we're at. Tim Stützle is a part of the perfect club, we'll call it. And let's play a little trivia here. Let's play a little trivia here. Who are the 5 players this season for the Ottawa Senators to play all 51 games?
Okay, well, full hand up. I'm looking at the skaters right now, but I can only see 4 of them. Well, I'm looking at it right now. So Tim Stützle, Drake Batherson, Brady Tkachuk, Claude Giroux. I have not scrolled down to the 4th person, so I'll try to guess.
Because you have it sorted by points.
Yes.
It's honestly one that's really impressive, I think.
Is it Ridley Gregg?
No. Choo choo.
Clevin?
Tyler Clevin has played all 51 games for the Ottawa Senators this year.
I wouldn't have guessed that. That would have taken me a while to guess. Yeah.
I like how we got so much chemistry we can play charades together.
Well, yeah, I think anyone that's spent what episode are we on today? 218?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we can figure each other out for charades. Yeah.
Love that. So credit to Tyler Clevin there. And this leads me perfectly into the next conversation.
Okay.
Pilsy, Claude Giroux, since signing with the Ottawa Senators, has not missed a game.
Yeah, that's crazy. Oh my God. The grizzled vet. Hey, shout out his personal trainer, Tony Greco. That guy is getting Claude Giroux prepped. 82
games last year. 82 games in his first year with Ottawa, and he's at 51 of 51 this year. He is tremendous competitor, I think would be an understatement. But what Claude Giroux has brought to the Ottawa Senators is stability, is leadership, is the face-off ability. 58.5% in the dot since joining the Ottawa Senators. 215 games, 177 points. He's already 28th all-time in points for the Ottawa Senators, 25th in assists,
nice.
and in points per game, Pilsy. He joined the Senators at 35 years old. And in points per game, let's go with a minimum of 21 games. I'm sorry, Alex Hemsky. You're 20 games, 17 points. That don't impress me much. He'd be 11th in points per game.
Wow.
He has the same points per game, the exact same points per game with the Ottawa Senators as Erik Karlsson in his prime.
Yeah.
Now I get it. He's a defenseman, but
he's
still
crushing it. I mean, Carl put up big points. Karlsson was an offenseman. He was not.
He had 82 and 82 one year.
Yeah. And to keep this conversation going and furthering it, Ross, Claude Giroux, you talk about how great he is on offense. This guy is a huge part of the Ottawa Senators penalty kill as well. Only Jake Sanderson has more shorthanded time on ice this season than Claude Giroux, and it's not by much. It's by 1 minute. Claude Giroux has played 125 minutes and 38 seconds shorthanded. So he's becoming a key part of this team defensively as well. And we were talking about how many shorthanded goals the Ottawa Senators get, Ross. So I was looking it up on NHL.com. They are fourth in the league in shorthanded goals for with 7. The Florida Panthers with 11, Tampa with 9, New York Rangers with 8, and then the Sens with 7. So they are getting it done shorthanded.
And Claude Giroux, of course, why we're talking about this is 1,100 points last night.
Huge.
On his career. So impressive. 67th player in NHL history to accomplish that. And he is inching ever so close, not only to the next place, which is Frank Mahovlich. Ever heard of him? But he is only 57 points away from Daniel Alfredsson.
Yeah, if he passes Alfie while Alfie is coaching the team, that'd be an awesome moment.
He's 13 games away from tying Daniel Alfredsson in games played, though. So Alfie's got him on points per game for sure.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
So Claude Giroux, shout out to you, sir, at 37 years old, finding ways to contribute, even though we know the speed's never really been his number one asset, but now he's not the fastest guy out there. But he's smart, he's wily, and 6 minutes shorthanded in last night's win over the Washington Capitals. Up next for the Ottawa Senators, it is the Minnesota Wild. But before we get to that, Pilsy, we did our trade bait board yesterday and the day or 2 days ago, and on my days of the week are all crazy. Thanks to having a 2-month-old for that.
It's Friday.
It's Friday today?
Yep.
We are bringing Friday energy. We really are. I've updated our trade bait board. You want to see it?
I'm so excited.
Read it off.
Trade targets. The Sens are a complete wagon. Don't trade for anyone. Don't trade anyone away. Keep things how they are. I know you guys love our trade talk, so we wanted to expand on the conversation. These are our trade targets. Nobody.
I'll take the Sens.
Yeah,
Sens are my number one target here on this list. All right. Hey, you know who else I wouldn't trade for the world? Our good buddy Seth Toupal is going to join us after the break to tee up tomorrow's game against the Minnesota Wild. It will wrap up the season series. Senators earn that third period win on the road against the Wild at the end of December. You're listening to Locked On Senators, your team every day. So the Ottawa Senators, winners of 3 in a row, now heading into a matchup on Saturday night against Minnesota. The Wild with an emotional shutout victory last night over the Montreal Canadiens in Marc-Andre Fleury's final game in La Belle Provence. Look, you won't often find us saying nice things about Montreal on this show, as it is a rival. But Pilsy, that was a pretty cool ovation they gave him, not only after the game, but during a TV timeout in the third period, a 2-minute standing ovation for one of their native sons.
Yeah, very nice. And very nice of the Minnesota Wild to lay a beat down on our rival Habs as well, but classy by the Habs.
How much money do you think Marc-Andre Fleury had on the board for a win last night?
Probably a decent amount. That's one he wanted to go out in style, and nothing better than blanking the Habs.
More than he paid for tickets for last night's game, you think?
Well, hopefully, yeah, he's going to break even on that.
No doubt. Well, for more on that, the host of Locked On Wild, good friend of the show, Seth Toupal. What's up, fella? Great to see you again.
Fellas, how we doing? We are having a great Friday here and looking forward to a little tilt tomorrow, a little Saturday afternoon tilt. I tweeted it out earlier today. I said, Wild and Sens on a Saturday? Am I in heaven?
Yeah, well, it may as well be a one anthem game because you guys are honorary Canadians down there in Mini.
Yeah, it's been, it has been just a bizarre season for the Minnesota Wild. I say that in the nicest way possible because everything you would normally expect is just completely backwards. The Wild just recently announced, obviously, that Kirill Kaprizov's going to be out of the lineup for minimum of 4 weeks. And ever since, they've played 2 games since, they've had 7 different players score goals. They've won both games. They are the best team in the league on the road, which defies all logic. And this is a little bit of a wagon that's starting to finally get back on track here after a couple of months of just kind of treading water.
Who's been the one player, Seth, that has really stepped up in Kirill's absence for the Wild?
It's I think the one that I have been most impressed with night in, night out has been Marco Rossi.
Yep.
But it has really been like an all hands on deck approach. I mean, the fourth line has finally started to get in on the scoring over the last couple of games. You got Matt Boldy, who has 18 goals this year. Him and Rossi have basically been alternating for team lead in Kaprizov's absence over the last few weeks. It just has been this nice collective of this player's going to score the goal. This defenseman's going to come up with the key block. And so I think the one that I'll give the most credit to, I guess, is John Hines, who has just really kept this team going and just continues to find ways to get a little more out of this group. Was pretty critical of the team's performance after the game against Calgary, in which Marc-Andre Fleury got punched in the face during a scrum. And nobody really did anything about it. And Hines was ticked after the game. He said, your goalie gets punched in the face, and we just kind of took that. And that I don't like that. So the team evidently had a nice little heart-to-heart after that game, and they have gotten back on track. But whether it be just tweaking lineups during games or just finding ways to pull a little more out of the lineup, Hines has this group dialed. And I challenge you to find a team that can play above 500, losing a Hart Trophy candidate and at points losing all 4 of your top defensemen. And the Wild they continue to hold either that second or third spot in the Central. Like I said, it defies logic what they're doing this year.
Well, it also defies logic, their home versus road splits. I mean, at home, they're 1 game below 500. They're 11, 12, and 1 at home, but they're 25 and 3 on the road. And they've played, like Ottawa, 2 teams that have played more road games than home at this point in the season. And we've been at the XL Energy Center sitting right next to you, Seth. Like, that's a great home ice advantage that they've got in Mini. It's just one of those unexplainable stats.
I have tried to figure out why this team just seems to do so much better on the road. And I think for whatever reason, it just is the style of play that they are looking to do on a nightly basis. They're looking to limit chances for the opponent, which isn't super flashy. You play defense and you score opportunistic goals. That's not the flashiest of play styles. So I think being able to go into opposing environments and just hold the other team off the board, allowing the fans to kind of get restless, I think that plays way better on the road than it does at home. But listen, like, some of these numbers are just insane. You think about it. On the road, when you are in somebody else's building, the Minnesota Wild, when leading after 2 periods on the road this year, are 15-0-0. Think about that.
Wow.
That just makes no sense. And when they are outshot on the road by their opponent, they're 10-4-2 on the road. Like, who does that? They're plus 26 in the goals department on the road. They're outscoring their opponents 27-16 in the first period on the road. Like, these are all numbers that you'd think a team like the Colorado Avalanche would have at home. But it's the Minnesota Wild in 2024, 2025 on the road.
Hey, I want to give some credit to the Sens, though. Sens are 8-1-1 when leading after 2 on the road this year. They've just, when they play ahead for Ottawa, they play well. Ottawa has the best record when scoring first in a game. So if you're a Wild fan listening to this, you want to score first. Senators are 21-3-0 when they score first in a game. So they can play well from up front, but when they allow the first goal, they're 6-17-4, including 2-11-2 on the road. So if the first goal is going to matter, obviously I just mentioned some road stats. The game is in Ottawa, but when they allow the first goal at home, they're 4-6-2. Funny enough, though, the Wild have won 2 in a row, and the Sens have been their biggest cheerleaders for those 2 games because it was against Toronto and Montreal. This is how the Wild lined up in those games. Joel Eriksson-Ek, the top line center between Matt Boldy and Mats Zuccarello. The second line, former Ottawa 67, Marco Rossi, between Marcus Foligno and Ryan Hartman. The third line is Frederick Gaudreau with Liam Ogren and Yakov Trenin. And the fourth line, Marat Kusnedinov with Devon Shore and Jakub Lauko. On defense, another former 67, Jacob Middleton with Brock Faber. You've got Declan Chisholm with Jared Spurgeon. John Merrill with Zach Bogosian, and former Ottawa Senator Philip Gustafson. We expect to get the start in goal. If you were to tell a Senators fan to focus in on one player on this group, who do you think is your locked on player to watch? For us, our lookout, but locked on for you.
I'm always going to sing the praises of Marco Rossi, and if you're looking for a guy to really watch him execute his process, Rossi is not the tallest of players, but he is, I think, the guy that goes to the net the most for the Minnesota Wild. So just think about how kind of interesting that looks, having a guy that's like 5'9" go stand in front of the goalie and try to be like the net front guy. And that's Marco Rossi in a nutshell. He's just an absolute pit bull out there. So if you're looking for a guy who is going to maybe not necessarily flashy, but is just going to have a really good chance to execute and has been playing really, really well, it's Rossi. I'll give you one more on the defensive side because I think he's taken the biggest leap so far this year. It's Jake Middleton. That mustache, absolutely flying. He was a guy that was brought in to provide a little physicality. He has turned into maybe the most important defenseman on this team, on a team that has Jared Spurgeon and Jonas Brodin on the roster too. So if you're looking for a guy to watch on the defensive side, keep an eye on number 5 because he's going to be flying around. He'll be hitting people. And like I said, look at that mustache. I mean, it is the envy of everyone that doesn't have one. And honestly, the envy of some of those that do. So he's going to be a huge factor in this game as well.
Yeah, I mean, he's plus 18 on the year, so clearly he's getting it done defensively. And Seth, one of the things I usually look at when a team is doing as well as the Minnesota Wild, I'm like, hey, they've got to be figuring out on the special teams, whether it's power play or penalty kill. But that's just not the case for the Minnesota Wild. Like, their power play is 22nd in the league at 19.9. And then their penalty kill is all the way down at 30th at 70.6. So, like, I guess my question to you is, how are they getting it done with a mediocre power play and a terrible penalty kill?
Well, they've just been over the last few years, and this penalty kill problem especially, this is something that goes back even 3 or 4 years. It just was masked by various things. If the Wild could simply play 5-on-5, they'd probably be the number 1 seed in the Western Conference right now. That's how good they are at not necessarily scoring 5-on-5 goals, but limiting chances for opponents at 5-on-5. They're a team that they have done a much better job of staying out of the penalty box this year than in years previous. But it is an absolute adventure when they're on the kill or when they're on the power play. You never know what you're going to get from the power play. It usually doesn't involve goals. And on the penalty kill, I have tried to break down every single possible thing it could be, and it seems like it's all of them at once. So whether it be not winning faceoffs on the kill, not clearing the puck, players taking gambles, goalies not making saves. If it was one of those things, it feels like you could navigate that for a kill, but it's like all 5 of those at once. And I hate it because I don't want to keep talking about it, but yet it seems like every few games it really flares up. If they could just play 5-on-5, the Wild they'd be tops in the West easily right now.
Well, the Ottawa Senators, if they only played weekends, would be tops in the East. Going back to that win over Minnesota, Seth, on December 29th, the Ottawa Senators had the following weekend off, and they played back-to-back Saturday, Sunday, every weekend since, with travel on 2 of them. They're 7-0 in their last 7 weekend games, and it started with that win in Minnesota.
Wow. Sometimes people just like to party on the weekends, I guess.
Yeah, well, for us doing the postcast as well, that's 7 days a week, LOSB, every day going through tomorrow. So we appreciate your insight there. Seth, what's the biggest storyline for the Wild going into this game?
I think it's just this notion of how is this team continuing to do this without Kirill Kaprizov? Like, John Hines said it. The formula for this team on how to win games without Kirill has been there all along. We just have to find it again. And for this team, it's playing stingy defense, laying it all out there. But it really is just kind of this competition to see who is going to step up on any given night and be the ones to score the goals. And we've seen 2 fourth-line goals over the last 2 games. Hadn't seen that in almost 2 months. Third-line goal, probably over a month since we saw one of those. So it's not the guys you would expect, but it does seem like guys are just saying, hey, I want to be the one to step up in this game. So, don't be surprised if you see a third or a fourth-line goal in this matchup. I'd love to just see a bunch of first-line goals, but as long as somebody's scoring, that's what it comes down to.
Final question for me here, Seth, and we always love having you on, one of our favorite Locked On hosts. Go check out Locked On Wild if you want to get some insight on the opponent coming up here for the Ottawa Senators. They just announced today that the salary cap will be going up the next 3 years. In 3 years' time, it's going to be huge, the number that it's at here. It's going to be in 2027, 2028, $113.5 million. And Seth, as soon as I saw that, and I saw your tweets getting excited about locking up some of the young players the Wild have, but there is no fan base in the NHL that has to be more excited about this news than the Minnesota Wild, a fan base that has been strapped with over $14 million in dead cap from the Parise and Suter buyouts. Like, you got to be just licking your chops thinking this offseason about all the different things that the Wild can do, and the fact that they've been able to not only just survive with that huge cap hit against them, but they're making playoffs. They're a good team, and now you get all that extra money to play around with. Like, how exciting is that, Seth?
Well, I was drooling at my desk today, and I thought, boy, I better go get something to eat. And I was like, wait, no, I just was looking at the tweet that said the salary cap's going up by almost $30 million over the next couple of years. I'm like, that's going to come in really nice. And you look at all these players that the Wild are going to be looking to lock up long term. Obviously, Marco Rossi is going to be a big one here coming up. You got Kirill Kaprizov's extension that is coming up as well. But those guys that I tweeted out, Danila Yurov, Zeev Boyum, they are going to be due for extensions. Maybe kind of weird to be thinking about that before they even set foot on the NHL roster. Yeah. But, a team that has had cap restraints as much as the Wild have, it's just something you think about. Anytime you are under financial strain, you always think about it going forward, no matter how good the times may be. It really does give you excitement at what this team is building and what they've been able to establish and what they've been able to do, considering they have had $15 million less. It does explain some of the playoff losses they've had lately where, yeah, if you had $15 million more to spend, maybe that series goes a little different way. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with it, but getting some of these guys locked into team-friendly deals, Matt Boldy, Brock Faber, I would imagine, I don't have anything to go off of this, but I would imagine if Rossi signs something long-term, it's going to be similar to what Matty Beniers got, 7x7. That seems to be the magic number. Being able to fit those in and still have money to add pieces that you need, it's going to be really nice for this team going forward, because I hate pinching pennies. I hate even more having to mention Zach Parise and Ryan Suter when it's not talking about their actual accomplishments. So we're in good win-win territory by being able to have money to spend and not having to complain about not having money to spend too.
Well, hey, we like seeing the Wild do well. Great fan base, and you do a great job of taking care of them over at Locked On Wild. We appreciate you jumping on, brother. Enjoy the game tomorrow, and we'll do this again down the road.
Fellas, it is an absolute privilege to join, and I look forward to watching your guys' postcast while I'm doing mine as well.
Awesome, brother. There goes Seth Toupal, the host of the Locked On Wild podcast. Pillsy, any final thoughts on today's show?
Final thoughts for me is, as much as we love Seth Toupal and the Wild, and they've been helping us out lately, we're hoping to dunk on them this weekend as the Sens Weekend Warriors continues to hopefully have success.
All right, that's it for us today. Have a great start to your weekend. We'll be back with the postcast following tomorrow's action. Senators taking on the Minnesota Wild. Thank you so much for liking, watching, engaging with the show. Means a lot to us. Please leave a 5-star review, a comment below as well, and make sure you're following on social media at Sens Central on Twitter and LockedOn.Senators on Instagram. This has been another edition. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan of the Locked On Senators podcast. Your team every day.